The terrible secret the Space Marines hide from humanity is one I was never meant to find. I remember the first time I saw them, huge in their shining blue armor, the Emperor's angels made flesh. I was just a blind astropath, trained to listen to their vox messages aboard the strike cruiser Dominus Vindictus. But one night, when the ship was quiet, I heard their prayers change. They were no longer praying to the God Emperor. They were whispering to something else, something old, something hungry, something they called Cosi Tuare. Fear filled my mouth like metal as I listened. Their voices were deep, distorted, and strange, clicking between words like insects. Later, when I accidentally accessed the gene vault, I understood why they hunted me afterward. Their bodies were changing. Their transformation was never complete. What happens when humanity's greatest defenders stop being human at all? I was 9 years old when the Ultramarines came to my world, Hydra. Even then, people already knew I was different. I had the witch sight, the power to see into the warp. The black ships had not yet come for me, but my parents knew they would. They kept me hidden whenever the imperial processions passed through our city. But I was a curious child. One night, while my parents slept, I slipped away to see the parade myself. I remember the sound before I saw them, a steady thunder that shook the ground beneath my feet. Then they appeared, giants in cobalt blue armor, each one a fortress of metal and flesh. I looked up at them with my witch sight, trying to keep my mental barriers strong as my father had taught me. But even through those walls, I could feel something vast and ancient inside them, like standing at the edge of a roaring storm. One of the giants turned his head. His helmet was off. His skin was white as stone, his face too perfect to be human. But his eyes, Emperor, save me, his eyes were wrong. They weren't looking at me, but through me, as if I were only a shadow. My knees gave out. I fell, not in worship, not in fear, but because my body forgot how to stand. In that moment, I understood what priests meant when they spoke of the divine, not the gentle love of a god, but the cold, terrible power of lightning. That was the first time I saw an angel. And as I learned many years later aboard the Dominus Vindictus, sometimes angels fall. Sometimes they were never angels at all. My name is Tyron Lore. I was an Imperial astropath, sworn to the God Emperor. This is my account, the truth of what I found aboard that ship. If you are hearing this, it means my final message reached someone brave enough to listen. The Inquisition will call me a heretic. The Adeptus Astartes will call me a traitor. But before you judge, hear what I have to say. I was assigned to the Dominus Vindictus 143 days ago by Terran standard. It was meant to be an honor. Few astropaths serve directly beside the Space Marines, and fewer still among the famous Ultramarines. I had been in the Imperial Navy for 27 years, with perfect service and unquestioned loyalty. When Captain Agamemnon himself requested me, how could I refuse? The Ultramarines were the sons of Guilliman, examples for all others to follow. The first month passed quietly. I did my work, maintaining psychic communications between ships and sending messages across the stars. The Marines ignored me, as expected. To them, I was a tool, a living machine made of flesh. Still, I served with pride. My quarters were small but comfortable. A cot, a desk, a shrine to the Emperor. I saw few people. Astropaths make others uneasy. Our empty eye sockets and burned faces remind them of what it costs to serve. It was on the 47th night that I first noticed something wrong. I was meditating, drifting through the warp currents, when I caught a whisper, a fragment of communication that was not meant for me. Space Marines' minds are strong, trained to resist psychic intrusion, but I had brushed against something faint yet distinct. At first I thought it was a normal Vox signal, but its rhythm, its sound was different. It had a psychic quality, not mechanical. It felt like a chant. It was a prayer, but not to the Emperor. The name they spoke was strange, hard to understand. Kosi Tuare, or something close to it. The sound made my head ache. I stopped listening immediately. My heart raced, my skin was cold, and I felt the ship around me go still. I told myself I had imagined it, that long exposure to the warp had twisted my senses. The next morning, I went to the medic, claiming a mild headache. The apothecary gave me a sedative and asked no questions. I said no more. For 6 days, I worked as usual, but on the 7th night, I heard it again. Kosi Tuare, hear us, guide our blades, accept our offerings. The voice was deep, inhuman. It filled my head like thunder. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voice was inside my mind, not outside it. We bear your mark, it said. We carry your seed. Soon the flesh will yield, and the truth will emerge. I should have reported it, but who would believe me? One astropath, claiming the Emperor's chosen sons, worshipped something else. They would call me mad or kill me. I needed proof. So I began listening carefully whenever I could. At night, when the ship grew quiet, I spread my psychic senses through the vessel. I caught pieces of thought, stray emotions, bits of dreams. Most of the Marines' minds were locked tight, but in certain chambers, deep inside the ship, I heard them again. Many voices chanting together, always that same name, Kosi Tuare. I started keeping a journal, dates, times, names of Marines, everything I could sense. If anyone found that journal, I would die. But I had to know the truth. I had to understand what was happening aboard the ship. On the 73rd day, I made a choice. I would see what was happening with my own eyes. Of course, I had no eyes. They had been burned away when I was bound to the Emperor. But I was truly blind. Astropaths see differently. We sense energy, light, and emotion. We see the psychic world that lies beneath the surface of reality. My sight was sharp. I could feel every shadow and thought that moved around me. That night, I left my quarters during the ship's dark cycle, when most of the crew slept. I moved quietly through the metal halls, dressed in my astropath robes. Anyone who saw me would think I was just working. Astropaths often keep strange hours. But I knew where I was going. I followed the psychic trail, the faint hum of ritual energy, toward the lower decks. The air grew colder. The metal walls seemed to vibrate with whispers. Then I felt them, the Marines, gathered ahead, their minds joined in a single pulse of thought. I crouched behind a bulkhead and opened my mind's sight, and what I saw was not holy. The great warriors of the Emperor knelt before a strange shape, a shadow of shifting light and sound, whispering their secret name, Kosi Tuare. In that moment, I knew humanity's greatest defenders had become something else entirely. The strange powers of the warp guide ships through space, not clocks or schedules. That night, the warp itself seemed to pull me toward the lower decks of the Dominus Vindictus, where the ship's gene seed chambers were kept. The gene seed is sacred to the Space Marines. It links each of them to their Primarch. If something evil had infected them, it would begin there. I followed narrow halls, avoiding main walkways and lifts. Twice I hid in dark corners as patrols marched past. My heart beat so hard I thought they might hear it, but the giants kept walking. As I moved deeper, the ship changed. The walls were no longer plain metal. They were covered with carved stone and statues of old heroes, their faces worn smooth by time and prayer. I had reached the sacred heart of the ship, where few humans ever went. The air felt heavy, filled with unseen energy. My psychic senses picked up a crowd of linked minds ahead, all focused on one purpose. But under that unity, I felt something wrong, a crack in the harmony. I followed that disturbance downward, like a hound on a scent. It grew cold. My breath misted. The metal floor turned to old stone. I realized this part of the ship was ancient, built during the Great Crusade, maybe even before the Horus Heresy. Then I heard them, not through my ears, but in my mind. Their thoughts were chanting together. Cosintuare, hidden truth locked in gene and bone. We are your vessels, we prepare the way. Ahead stood a huge door made of black metal, carved with ultramarine symbols. The carvings hurt my mind to look at. The door was locked, but I did not need to open it. I placed my hand on the cold surface and pushed my mind beyond it. What I saw inside shattered my faith forever. The chamber was vast. Hundreds of candles burned, yet the ceiling remained lost in shadow. In the center was a stone platform. 13 Space Marines knelt around it. Their helmets were off, but their faces looked strange, like they were melting or changing shape. On the platform rested a great metal coffin, covered with strange runes. Its lid slid open with a hiss. From inside rose a beam of blue light, forming an image above the coffin. I expected to see their Primarch, Robute Rulaman, but the figure that appeared was something else entirely. It was tall and thin, its limbs too long, its joints bending in the wrong places. Its head was stretched, its jaw split in two, and eyes, hundreds of glowing eyes, covered its body, each blinking separately. Cosintuare, the Marines said together, voices echoing through the chamber and in my mind. Father of the hidden path, maker of the final evolution. The creature raised its twisted arms as if giving a blessing. Then it spoke, not aloud, but directly into my thoughts. Its voice sounded like gravel dragged over glass. My sons, it said, the time of revelation is near. The seed I planted 10,000 years ago grows strong. Soon, the transformation will be complete. One Marine stood and stepped forward. I recognized him. Captain Iman, second only to Marnius Calgar himself. He removed his glove and reached his bare hand into the beam of light. His arm began to twist. The skin rippled, something moving beneath it. His fingers stretched and split until his hand looked more like an insect's claw than a human's. But instead of pain, his face showed pure joy. The changes grow faster, great Kosintuare. Each battle, each new gene seed brings us closer to your design. But there are problems. The Inquisition suspects. Gilliman stirs in his tomb on Macragage. If he awakens... The creature interrupted him. Gilliman is only a piece of myself, separated long ago. His awakening means nothing. It may even help us. Continue as planned. Strengthen the catalyst in the next batch of gene seed. Those who cannot survive the change were never worthy. I tore my mind away from the door so fast that I nearly lost control. My body stumbled backward. A cry escaped me before I could stop it. The sound echoed in the empty hall. For a moment, I froze, sure they had heard me. But no alarm came. Maybe the thick metal blocked the noise, or maybe the Marines were too lost in their ritual to notice. I did not stay to find out. I ran. I no longer cared about stealth. I only needed to escape. My thoughts spun wildly. The Ultramarines, the Emperor's perfect sons, were corrupted. Not only corrupted, but part of a plot that might reach back to the birth of the Primarchs themselves. If one of the first chapters had fallen, how many others had too? I reached my quarters shaking. I locked the door and fell to my knees before the small shrine to the Emperor. I prayed harder than ever before, for understanding, for courage, for any reason to believe what I seen wasn't real. But there was no answer, only the pounding of my heart. I couldn't sleep. I paced the small room over and over. The image of that creature and Imon's changing hand burned into my mind. What could I do? I could report what I had seen to the Inquisition, but how? All long-range messages went through the ship's astropathic choir, and every one was watched by officers. Any secret signal would be caught. Even if I sent a message, who would believe me? The word of one astropath against the honor of the Ultramarines? I would be executed for slander before anyone investigated. I could try to go back to the chamber, find proof, record something, but that would be suicide. If they caught me, they would not kill me quickly. I could stay quiet, pretend I knew nothing, ask for a transfer when possible, but I knew I could not. Whatever the Marines were doing, it was a danger to all mankind. Silence would make me a coward and a traitor to the Emperor. When the ship's lights rose to mark the new day, I made my choice. I would keep investigating, but carefully. I would need help and information, though I had no idea where to find either. For the next few days, I acted normal. I sent and received messages, performed my duties, and joined in daily ship rituals. No one suspected a thing. But inside, I was always watching, always planning my next move. Then, on the 79th day, chance gave me a way out. I wanted to investigate the Ultramarines properly, to find out if what I had seen was truly heresy or just a misunderstanding caused by my own ignorance. The meeting was set for 3 days later. That gave me only a short time to plan what I would say and what I would keep secret. If I said too little, they might think I was paranoid or confused. If I said too much without proof, they could accuse me of being the heretic. During those 3 days, I worked carefully. I wrote and rewrote the message I hoped to send to Savine. I also continued secretly watching the Marines, especially Captain Eidemann and the ones I had seen in the strange ritual. That's when I began to notice small, unsettling details I had missed before. Sometimes they tilted their heads at strange, unnatural angles when they thought no one was looking. At other times, I heard faint clicking noises when they spoke, like insect mandibles hidden beneath their voices. Their armored hands also twitched oddly, fingers spreading and curling again in ways no human joints should move. Each thing alone might be easy to dismiss, but together they formed a pattern too disturbing to ignore. On the night before the meeting, I made a terrible mistake. I tried to access the ship's data archives to find any record of gene seed storage, implantation, or problems noted by the apothecaries. I had some training in dealing with cogitors, enough to bypass normal ship security, but the gene seed records were guarded by far stronger protection systems. My clumsy attempt triggered silent alarms across the ship. By the time I realized what had happened, it was too late. Security servitors were already moving. A ship-wide message ordered all non-essential crew to stay in their quarters because of a data breach. They didn't name me, but they didn't need to. I was one of the few who had the access and the motive to search those files. They would find me soon. I sealed my quarters, though I knew a simple lock couldn't stop Space Marines. I thought about destroying my journal, but decided against it. If they caught me, my records might be the only proof I had, my only chance to be heard before judgment. Instead, I prepared a desperate message, not the careful one I had planned for Savine, but a quick, encoded warning. I hid it within background warp noise, using secret astropathic ciphers only a few could recognize. I prayed that someone with power and courage might receive it. I had just finished sending the message when the door exploded inward with a deafening crash. The psychic wave of fury that hit me almost knocked me out. I stumbled back as 3 huge figures filled the doorway, Space Marines in full battle armor, bolters aimed at me. Their faces were hidden by helmets, but I could feel the hatred radiating from them. In the center stood Apothecary Valles, the same one who had treated me weeks earlier. "Astropath Tyron Law," he said, his voice flat and mechanical through his helmet's vox. "You are charged with unauthorized access to restricted data. You will surrender for interrogation." There was no point in lying or resisting. I raised my hands, palms open. "I will come peacefully," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I request to speak with Captain Eidemann. What I found concerns the safety of this ship and the Imperium itself." Valles made a sound, a horrible buzzing laugh that didn't sound human. It was the noise of insects crawling and rubbing against one another. "Oh, you will have your audience, Astropath, but not in the way you expect." 2 Marines grabbed me roughly and dragged me into the corridor. I didn't resist. There was no point in fighting them. Better to save my strength and stay alert for any chance to survive. But they didn't take me to the brig or an interrogation room. Instead, we went deeper into the ship, through old, unused halls. My heart sank as I realized where we were headed. The same place I had seen in my vision, the ritual chamber. They called it Cogitator. The walk passed in a blur of fear and whispered prayers. I repeated every holy word I knew, but I doubted the Emperor could hear me, or care to. We reached the great engraved doors I had seen before. This time they opened by themselves, revealing the chamber beyond. It looked exactly as I had seen in my mind, but far worse in person. The air was thick with incense and another smell, sweet and rotten, like decaying fruit. Hundreds of candles lined the walls, but I saw now they weren't wax at all. They were made of a translucent yellow material that looked grown. The circular dais stood at the center, and on it the sarcophagus I'd seen before, now open. A figure stood beside it. Captain Eidemann turned as we entered. My breath caught in my throat. His once noble face was changed. His jaw had split down the middle, showing rows of sharp, insect-like teeth that went deep into his throat. His eyes, which were blue, had multiplied. Smaller eyes clustered around the main pair, blinking separately as they focused on me. "Astropath Tyron," he said, his voice buzzing now with insect sounds. "You are busy, spying, stealing, sending secret messages? Did you think such actions would be unnoticed?" The Marines forced me to my knees. I looked up at him, horrified but defiant. "I serve the Emperor," I said, "as you once did, before your corruption." Eidemann's face twitched, forming something like a grin. "Corruption," he said slowly. "No, Astropath, ascension. The Emperor created the Primarchs not only as generals, but as vessels for something greater. Cosidator was ancient when the Emperor was young. He made a pact, trading 20 suns for a new order to come." I shook my head. "Lies! The Emperor created the Primarchs as his sons, not for this." But deep down, fear whispered doubts. The Emperor's plans had always been wrapped in mystery and contradiction. Could there have been truths even the High Lords hid? He leaned close. The smell of him was not human, musky and organic, like something shedding its skin. "We are his true sons," he said, "not the broken followers of chaos or the mindless servants of a corpse. We are the bridge to humanity's next form." I wanted to deny him, but I couldn't fully ignore what I had seen in my life, the lies, the gaps in history, the things the Imperium buried. Still, I could not let such heresy stand. "You are deluded," I said. "You have been changed by alien corruption." Eidemann straightened. "Your opinion is irrelevant, but your mind, that is useful." He gestured to Valis. The apothecary stepped forward, metal arms extending from his backpack. He gripped my head, locking onto the neural ports at the base of my skull, the same implants all astropaths use to channel their powers. A flash of cold metal touched my skin. "Begin the extraction," Eidemann ordered. Then came pain. Pain beyond what I could describe. It felt like every thought and memory was being ripped from my skull, one by one. I screamed until I had no voice, then screamed silently in my mind, trapped inside my unmoving body. Through it all, I saw Valis behind me, his machines humming as they stored everything I was. I saw Eidemann's twisted face watching me, eyes blinking in unnatural patterns. At last, the pain faded, replaced by an emptiness so deep it swallowed everything. "The extraction is complete, Captain," Valis said. "Primary memory centers copied and erased. Motor functions remain intact." Eidemann leaned over me, his many eyes glimmering. "Can you hear me, astropath?" he asked. "You still exist, but the person you were is gone. Your body remains useful, though. A vessel, like us." I tried to speak, but my lips no longer obeyed. My tongue was useless. I could still breathe, still blink, still see the world around me, but I couldn't move or speak. I was trapped inside my own body, only a passenger in my own flesh. "Take him to the conversion chamber," Captain Iphon ordered. "His psychic power makes him valuable for the next phase of breeding. We waste nothing." The word echoed through my empty mind. Breeding. For what? For whom? I had no answers as the Marines lifted my limp body and carried me from the ritual chamber. Everything around me blurred. My thoughts broke apart, coming and going like a broken radio signal. I caught flashes of other rooms as we moved, laboratories full of tanks with bubbling liquid where half-formed shapes floated and twitched. I saw holding cells with things that might have once been human, now twisted beyond recognition. Everywhere I looked, I saw the same symbol carved on walls and doors, the strange pattern from the ritual chamber, the one that had hurt my psychic sight to look at. Now I understood why. It wasn't decoration or a magic rune. It was a kind of code, a picture of DNA, the pattern of life itself. It was a blueprint for the transformation these corrupted Space Marines were forcing upon themselves. They carried me into a smaller room deep inside the ship. Unlike the ritual hall, this one was clean and bright, with metal tables and glowing lights. Surgical tools were laid out in perfect rows. Tanks of bubbling liquid lined the walls, connected to tubes and machines. They stripped off my robes and strapped me to one of the tables. I couldn't move anyway, but they fastened me down tightly. Apothecary Vallis approached, his tools humming as they prepared for another procedure. "Your psychic potential will serve the breeding program well," he said, his voice buzzing strangely. "The offspring made from your genes may become useful, communication vessels for the next generation." The words filled me with horror. What kind of monsters were they trying to create, and why? Apothecary Vallis must have seen the question in my eyes, the only part of me that could still move. He removed his helmet, and what I saw almost broke my sanity. His head was long and swollen, his skull stretched to fit a brain larger than any human's. His jaw had split in two, forming insect-like mandibles that clicked and scraped as he spoke. "You wonder about our purpose, why we choose this path, what drives us to embrace what you call corruption." One of his metal arms extended a thin needle, hovering near my neck. "I could tell you the whole truth, how this began before the birth of the Imperium. I could show you the glory that waits for those brave enough to evolve beyond the Emperor's limits. But you no longer have the mind to understand. Too much of you has been taken." The needle sank into my neck. I felt the cold rush of drugs flooding through my veins, and my body drifted even farther from me. "You will experience the truth directly," he said. "Your body will be reused. Your genes will be mixed with ours. The results will be hybrid beings, not true Astartes, but strong enough for special roles. They will communicate, navigate, even infiltrate the Imperium itself." My mind began to float away as the drugs took hold. I saw myself from above, lying on the table, surrounded by Vallis and his helpers. They worked like machines, cutting, collecting samples, cataloging every part of me. My body was still alive, but only as raw material for their twisted evolution. And yet, a tiny spark of me survived, something deep inside, my soul, my link to the Emperor, or maybe just the stubborn will of a human refusing to give up. That spark stayed alive as I drifted out of the room, out of my body, through the ship's cold metal walls. I found myself in the astropathic choir chamber, where I had once worked. It was empty now, the other astropaths locked away because of the alert I had triggered. But the chamber itself was never truly still. The machines that focused psychic power still hummed with energy. At the center floated the faint, glowing shape of the astropathic matrix, the core that linked all our minds when sending messages through the warp. I had used it every day. Now, as I looked at it, without a body, I saw it for what it truly was, not just a machine, but a bridge between real space and the warp. With nothing left to lose, I threw myself into that light. The sensation defied description. It wasn't pain, though it burned. It wasn't pleasure, though it brought release. It was transformation. I stopped being Tyron Law, astropath of the Imperium. I became something else, something both more and less than human. I became the message. The Matrix, built to send thoughts across the stars, now sent me. My entire being, every memory, every truth, every warning, was compressed into a single signal and blasted into the warp with all the power the ship could give it. I felt myself stretch, tear, and scatter as the warp currents caught me. My mind broke into countless fragments, each carrying the same warning. Some fragments were lost in the chaos. Some would reach their destinations twisted beyond sense. But maybe, just maybe, one would survive and someone would understand. As I drifted, I saw things no living eyes could see. I saw the ship from outside, a tiny speck drifting in endless darkness. I saw other ships and worlds flash past as my scattered mind raced outward. And I saw Kositor, not a god or demon, but something far greater, a process, a force of change that had worked across 10,000 years. I saw the gene seed, the sacred substance that makes Space Marines what they are. I saw it for what it truly was, not a gift, but a tool, a seed of transformation. The gene seed was never meant to stay pure. It was designed to change, slowly, invisibly, over generations. Every new implant, every wound, every battle, all of it pushed the Marines closer to a final stage of evolution. The Ultramarines were not the only ones. Every chapter carried the same hidden code. Some were simply further along the path. This was the truth I had uncovered. The Space Marines were never the perfect warriors the Emperor intended. They were the beginning of something new, something that might save humanity or destroy it. I knew the Imperium could never accept this. My warning, sent from a dying soul, would likely be ignored. My journal, my proof, was gone. And even if my message reached someone in power, would they dare move against the Emperor's chosen sons? Those were my final thoughts as I began to fade. My fragments scattered into the warp, each carrying my warning into the dark. My body was gone, turned into something unholy. My mind was dissolving. But somehow, some part of me still existed, enough to speak, enough to warn. Perhaps you are the one who received this message. Perhaps you are hearing me now. The Space Marines are changing. They have been, since the beginning. Every new generation brings them closer to something else, something no longer human. Watch them. Listen. Notice the way they move, the things they say when they think no one hears. The differences between the ancient dreadnoughts and the new Primaris Marines, they are not purer, only more evolved. The angels of death have fallen, though they don't yet know it, and in their fall, they may take all of humanity with them. I am Tyron Law. I was an astropath. I saw the truth. And now, so have you.